How's it going, Sacred City? Pastor Justin here. One of the things that I'm wanting to do this year is to help our people grow as missionaries. And I think the best way for me to do that is to make a series of videos like this, putting together a little bit of a missionary toolkit for us all to learn and grow how to be better missionaries in our city, in our everyday life. My plan is to start really simple tonight and then just build on them, work, getting into some things like how to understand the culture, how to apply the gospel to certain aspects of the culture, how to understand idolatry, things like that. That's more complex. I really want to start out basic because none of that really matters unless you are in a position to actually have those conversations with real people, right? And so today I have got 4 tips, okay? 4 tips to be a better missionary. This is kind of like missional or missiology 101. And so I hope it's a blessing to you, and I'm going to kind of just jump right in with it this afternoon. Number 1, to be a good missionary, you have to know that you have been sent by God. It's very easy to think of missionaries only in those people that go overseas and those people that leave their city or their home to travel overseas to specifically share the gospel, help people. Yes, those are missionaries, but you are also a missionary. Remember the Missio Dei, that God the Father sent the Son, the Father and the Son sent the Spirit, and the Father, Son, and Spirit have all sent the church. And so when we come to faith in Jesus Christ, God is like a spiritual tornado, right? He sucks us in and he spits us out. So he saves us and brings us in, and then he sends us out as his witnesses or as his missionaries in the world, that we are sent by God to live in such a way that the people around us come to know who God is and what he's done. Now, one key text where Jesus talks about, remember that he says the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. He says this in Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 through 33. And he says, pray therefore that the Father would send out more laborers, right? Well, guess what? That's us. We are those laborers. We are those missionaries. And so one of the things that we might need to do if we don't think of ourselves as a missionary is to maybe print out a little simple prayer that just says, Lord, today I want to remember that this is the day that you have made, that you have called me into your family and you've sent me out on your mission. And so I'm asking you to give me opportunities to meet people today, to develop relationships today, to share the gospel today, to be a light in my world today. Just praying that little missionary prayer to help orient us for our day. It might be when you go to work, it might be when you're headed to the coffee shop, etc. But just praying that little prayer to get the first step. The first step is understanding that you're a missionary, understanding that you've been sent out by God to help people meet him and know what he's like, okay? Second, really simple tip to being a better missionary. Be where they are, okay? Listen to this scripture from 1 Thessalonians 2:8. Because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. So there is this missionary impulse to share the gospel with people, but also to share their lives with people, to be where they are, to be in relationship with them. Now, I know this is a really simple idea, but it's actually not that easy in practice, because as Christians come to church and get saved and surround themselves more and more with other Christians, they tend to inadvertently sometimes squeeze out those who don't know Christ. We only have a certain amount of time. And so the more we hang out with Christians, sometimes the less time we have and the less opportunity we have to be around those who are not Christians. So this principle is really simple. As God's sent people, we must be where unbelievers are. We must not isolate ourselves into holy huddles. We must go where unbelievers are on purpose. One way to think about this is we must become a regular somewhere where outsiders or unbelievers hang out. Okay? Now, since I work for the church, I am surrounded almost all day long by Christians. And so, therefore, because I still feel myself, I'm still a missionary, and I'm not just a missionary on Sunday morning or a missionary on Tuesday night with my missional community. I'm called by God to introduce people to Him every day. And I want God to add to the church every single day those who are being saved, like we saw in Acts 2. So I have to go out of my way. I have to go to greater lengths to be where unbelievers are. And so what do? You guys know I've done CrossFit for a long time, and I made it a point to be around unbelievers and invite unbelievers in when I'm doing CrossFit. Right now I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm a part of a BJJ gym. I'm mainly there to learn the sport, yes, to have fun and all that, yes, to get in good shape, yes. But I want to be where unbelievers are, right? And so I'm there as a missionary. I'm there on purpose. I go there 4 times a week at a minimum. I'm developing relationships there. I'm connected there. I'm a member of that community. I also spend about an afternoon or maybe more a week doing my work or having meetings down at the cigar shop in downtown Davenport, the drawing room. I'm down there. Some days I go in there to work, but last week I was like, I'm going in there, but if this guy's down there, I'm going to put my work aside and I'm going to spend the whole time getting to know him and getting to know his story. And guess what? He was down there, and I spent 2 hours listening to his story and just getting to know him in a greater way. My family also does a lot of walks every single week. We go on at least a walk, or 1 walk a week at least. When it's nice out, we probably go almost every night. As we're walking, we're meeting neighbors, we're waving, we're stopping, we're talking. We want to get to know our neighbors, right? So I'm doing all of these things on purpose as a missionary, looking for opportunities to invite people into relationship and also to teach them and talk to them about God, right? Because we're missionaries sent to restore all things back to God Himself. Think about 1 Peter 3:15. It says, "In your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense or defense of the faith to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you." All right, think about that. He says, always be ready. You could say, always be ready to share the gospel. Always be ready to defend the faith. Always be ready to tell people why you're happy, why you have joy, why do you have hope, why do you have got gospel fruit, right? Always be ready. Well, the reality is, if you are rarely around unbelievers, it's doubtful that anyone will ever ask you that question. They will never see the difference in you because they're not around you to see it, and they're not going to do that through Facebook, more than likely. So I want you, second point, be where they are. I want you to think about your life right now. Where do you regularly spend time that gives you the opportunity to be in relationship with those who do not know Christ? Are you going there on purpose as a missionary? So you could go to the coffee shop and sit there and put your headphones on and zone out, and you're actually there where unbelievers are, but you're not going there as a missionary. You're not going there willing to be interrupted. You're not going there to meet the barista or to meet the guy across the table from you or the guy next to you, et cetera, okay? Now, if you look at your life and you go, actually, I went to a Christian school, I went to a Christian college, I go to a Christian church, I go to a Christian gym, and everything is like all church people, then you need to evaluate your life. You need to ask the Spirit to show you where you need to go to be a regular, where you need to frequent, what people is the Lord going to send you that you can share the gospel and share your life with as well. If you're not rubbing shoulders with unbelievers, you're never going to experience the joy of seeing one of them come to faith. And so, number one, remember you're a missionary. Number two, you have to be where they are. Okay? Number three, be interested. Now, I think most of us, we want to be interesting people. We want people to like us and to invite us into their life and where we could share with them about Jesus, right? We want them to be interested in us so they invite us over for dinner or something like that. But I think being a good missionary is less about being an interesting person and more about being an interested person. And I want to think about this in two ways. First, what are you into? Boring people are just not into anything. Maybe they just sit at home and watch Netflix all day or all night. That's a boring person, right? But people, and I think even people that are creative or people that realize the way that the Lord has made the world, that God has given us a world full of creativity and intrigue, and he wants us to engage his world with a sense of curiosity, where we're discovering unique things about the world that our good and glorious God has given us, that every good gift comes down from the Father of lights. And so we're meant to be kind of like Indiana Jones, discovering the treasures that God has hidden in creation. So if you're into chemistry, go, delve the cave of chemistry and find the treasures that God put there and be really interested in that thing, right? When you interact with God's world with a deep interest, you are going to learn interesting things about the world. And guess what? The more you learn, the more interesting things you learn about the world, the more interesting you kind of become, right? You know a lot about this topic, or you know a lot about a lot of topics or whatever. That means you're going to have more things to talk about with unbelievers. When I think about my life, the Lord wired me in such a way that I get really passionate about things and I really enjoy things and I get really excited. So I know a lot about wrestling. I'm really engaged in wrestling. I've been known a lot about CrossFit. I go head over heels in that, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and bourbon. Bourbon has been a more recent interest of mine, that I'm literally reading books on bourbon, and I'm going to bourbon tastings, and I'm collecting bourbon, and I'm hanging out with bourbon collectors, and I'm in bourbon groups on Facebook, and it's just super interesting to me how the process is made and how everything works. I've been into construction. I know quite a bit about construction and remodeling and home building and manhood and fatherhood and Christianity, and on and on and on to go. All of these things, I'm just really interested in knowing how God's made the world and what's it mean to be a godly man and what's the Bible about. So I throw myself into these things. I'm just really interested in these things. And as you get really interested in different things, first off, you become more of an exciting person, because people like to be around people who are interested in things, and you know more about more things, and then that enables you to talk with people and interact with people in new ways. So that's the first thing. Just be interested in the world. Be interested in the way God's created things, right? Be an interested person. But secondly, and this one is even more important, I would say, maybe, we must be actually interested in knowing other people. So when we interact with someone, we're not thinking about what do they think of me, or I hope they think I'm interesting, or hope they think I'm cool or funny or whatever. We're actually interested in them. This usually means a couple things, like, do you want to know their story? Are you interested in hearing about their hobbies and what they're into? And some people are like, well, how do you do that, Justin? What does it look like to be interested in somebody else? And it really means two things. It means listening intently and asking good questions. That's what it typically means. When you go to the coffee shop, you begin to take a genuine interest in the people around you, in the barista. You say, how was your day? you begin to notice things about her or about him, and ask, hey, where did you get that? Or what are you into? Or hey, I heard you talk about this. How long have you been into that thing? Or whatever. You just take an interest in their story and you look for opportunities to get to know them in greater way, right? When you get a chance, you ask a person, where are you from? Where did you live before here? How did you find your way here? Did you go to college? Where did you go to college? What did you major in? What do you do for a living, right? As you do this, you're kind of creating a mental file of this person, and you're filing these little facts and these little factoids in that file, and you're getting to know this person in a greater way. I got two examples, personal examples. When I was in Omaha, I joined a CrossFit gym there, and one of the owners of the gym, he was an interesting dude. He was I would say he's kind of cold and standoffish and a little bit aloof. And I was sent there as a missionary. And so I was there to make disciples. I was there to introduce people to Jesus. And so I was, trying to make my way into his life. I was trying to interact with him. I was interested in him. I was trying to get to know him. And through, the class chat, basically, we just chit chat back and forth. I learned that he was into Cormac McCarthy novels. I'd never read anything by Cormac McCarthy. And so I said, okay, there, boom, I got something from him. I filed it away. I went and bought 3 different Cormac McCarthy novels. I read through them as fast as I could. And when I was reading through it, I was like, oh, this is interesting, because all of these novels are about kind of like the quintessential masculine man, the cowboy, the one who will stand for truth when no one else will, the one who will die for the weak when no one else will. They're for that type of man. And I was able to see, okay, I bet you this is part of his worldview. I bet you that's what he thinks men are for. I bet you that's what the kind of man he wants to be. And I think I could use this to actually share the gospel with him, to open up doors for the gospel. Because they were all about strong masculine men, right? Well, the funny thing was, as I listened and I started listening to his story and I started hearing him and interacting with him, he was dating a girl. He was living with this girl. He just got this girl pregnant, and they weren't engaged. They weren't married, anything. And so one day, as I had built a little bit of a rapport with him, I just said, hey man, when are you going to man up and make an honest woman out of your girl? And that's the way a guy in those books would talk to another character. Like, quit being a wimp. What are you doing? Why don't you man up and get engaged? Why don't you man up and marry this wife and stop sinning, stop screwing around? Well, he looked at me, and then he's like, come on, let's go talk. And then he took me into this other room, and he just poured out like they were having difficulties. And I told him, you need to humble yourself like Jesus did for the church. And you go back and apologize and repent to her, and you own the whole thing. And that's what it looks like to be a leader in your home. And then the next week, he comes to me, and he pulls me off to the side, and he's like, it worked. I'm like, what worked? He's like, that gospel thing. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I humbled myself, and I admitted my wrong, and I confessed to her, and we had the best weekend of our relationship. And I was like, hey man, the gospel works. That's great. I'm glad you did it. Now when are you gonna get engaged? He's like, all right, it's coming. Let's have that conversation. Fast forward a couple years down the road, he invites me, they get married, he invites me to the wedding. I go back to Omaha and get to be a part of it. And then I go to get my certification, my level 1 certification for CrossFit, and he's the guy doing the whole certification process. Get to spark up a conversation. I eventually get his address. I send him a Tim Keller book on prayer, wrote a little note inside of it for him. I was praying for him, and connected it back to the Cormac McCarthy type stuff too. And then 6 months, a year later, he emails me and says that he came to faith and that he's looking for a church, and he just thanked me for being a normal Christian dude who reached out to him and was a manly man, and he could see in me what it would look like to be a Christian like me. Like, oh yeah, that guy's like me. I could be a Christian like that. And it was just a key piece to his conversion. Second one was just recently. Again, I'm into bourbon right now. I'm bourbon chasing, trying to find these hard to find bottles, and I'm part of this Facebook group, and I posted this I found a couple bottles and I posted this picture in that group, and a guy was like, "Hey, I've been trying to find that bottle for years. So hard to find. It's one of my favorite bottles ever. If you ever find it again, let me know. I would love to get it from you." And he's like, he's from like Iowa City, actually. Well, a couple weeks later, I'm in a gas station, walk by it, I see that bottle sitting right there. I'm like, huh, how convenient is that? Now, if I'm just thinking about myself, I look at the bottle, oh, I've already got that bottle, no big deal. I just walk by it. But I think of myself as a missionary, and so immediately I go, oh, that guy wanted that bottle. So I bought the bottle. I messaged the guy. I said, hey, I found this bottle that you've been looking for. You want it? Oh my goodness, dude, I can't believe it. Yes. You willing to meet me halfway? I'm like, yeah, I'll meet you halfway to Iowa City. So I met him halfway, gave him the bottle. He was super thankful and all this kind of stuff. And he gets out, he's got like a triathlon, like an Ironman triathlon shirt on. And I say, oh, have you done the Ironman? Yeah, man. And then we get in talking about Ironmans. We get in talking about athletics. We get in talking about David Goggins and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just there chatting it up with him. It's all right. Well, and he's like, if I ever find anything in Iowa City, I'll get it to you. If you ever find anything downport, let me know. I'm like, all right, cool, no problem. I leave, and by the time I even leave, my phone is blowing up on Facebook. This guy, thanking me, and hey, man, he's like basically just starting a conversation with me. And I developed a friendship with this guy, and all it did was being interested. I'm interested in bourbon, and then doing something good for him, right? Blessing him in some way. And then being a little bit interested in him as a person. Oh, I see you did triathlons. What does that mean? We're just interested in you, right? And guess what? He got interested back because I was interested in him. He got interested back. And we've got, another relationship, another opportunity for this guy to hear the gospel in the future. I have no idea where it's going to go. But that leads me to my last point. Okay, so we've got, think of yourself as a missionary. Be where they are. Right? Be interested. Be interested. And now lastly, be a person who adds value. If you practice the first 3 missional tips, you're going to have met some people who aren't Christians, and you'll have learned some things about them, and that's good. Most likely, somewhere along in your conversation, you're going to hear of something they need, or you're going to hear of some way that you can add value to this person's life. Now, this will be unique to you, and it'll be unique to your gifts, okay? There's some things that are general, but then there's some things that are going to be very specific to you and your gift set, right? If you think about those 2 stories I just told, I added value by being invested in his life. I added value to the CrossFit guy by sending him a book. I added value by reading those books, but then saying that one statement to challenge him on, you're not really being that type of man that you're aspiring to, dude. You're kind of being a wimp, actually. I added value to him there, etc. The other guy, I added value. I just bought him a bottle of bourbon, right? And that's how I added value to him. So think about all the ways that you can actually add value to someone's life. You could listen well and then give them good biblical advice or feedback. Counsel someone well, right? That's one way you can add value. You could connect them with someone. They're needing a contractor, and you know of a Christian contractor or a contractor in your church, and you want to connect them there. And now you're doing that to be a blessing to them, but you're also doing that hoping they're going to develop more relationships. You could connect them with a pastor, right? Somebody needs a lot of people call me when they need a marriage counseling, they need a wedding done, etc. An accountant, an attorney, a coach. Oh, you're looking to get in shape? I know somebody that has a gym. I know these coaches that can help you out. Oh, you need a good surgeon. I have a recommendation for a surgeon. I've got, just being a person that adds value, that wants to help them some way in their life, right? You could physically help them by watching their kids, help them with something in their yard, help them change their brakes, help them reside their house, help them, do the landscaping project, whatever. You could give them a book. You could add value by buying them a coffee. You could, there's just infinite ways to add value. You want this person, I'm going to make this person better by being in relationship with me. I'm going to add value to their life. It might be just I'm adding the value of a good conversation. I'm adding the value of a good friendship. I'm having them over for dinner and drinks, and I'm giving them good food, and I'm giving them good drinks, and we're just going to enjoy these gifts together. You're adding value to their life. Now, obviously, and we could share the gospel with them, which would add infinite value to their life, right? We've got that as well. But here's the deal. When you become a person who can add value to every relationship that you're a part of, people will naturally come to you and call you and text you more often, and you will have more opportunities to speak into people's life, to invite them to missional community, to invite them to church, to share the gospel with them. And that's how many people come to faith. All right. So those are 4 really simple tips that every one of us need to be practicing. Before we learn how to analyze worldviews and understand cultural idols and get to people's heart issues, these first things are primary, okay? Think of yourself as a missionary. Be where they are. Be interested. And be a person that adds value to other people. Now, I got a little printout for you. You guys are filling it out already. It's got a few questions here. The questions are very simple. Just want to know what stood out for you in the teaching. What's your next step to becoming a better missionary? Who is God putting on your heart to share the gospel and your life with? And what would it look like for you to adjust your life to better position yourself to be an effective missionary? So the mission of God is out there. There's people out there that God wants you to run into, but you've got to position your life in such a way that you're actually going to run into those people. You're actually going to, sovereign grace is at work right now. God is saving the elect, and your neighbor might be one of them. But if you never have a relationship with them, you're not going to be the guy that gets to share the gospel with them and they get to come to faith. If you're not at the coffee shop or at the smoke shop or wherever it is, or the gym, you're not going to be the guy or the gal that gets to lead that person to Christ or gets to invite that person in the missional community. And guess what? You're going to miss out. It is a huge blessing to be used by God to see people come to faith. So 4 simple tips. Hope it helps, guys. Hope it stirs some good conversation in your huddles, but also in your missional communities. I'd love for you to take this teaching and take it right back to missional community and do it there as well. Train your people how to be better missionaries. I love you guys. I'm praying for you. If you have any questions, email me, justindean@sacredcitychurch.com. God bless you.